Under the moonlit sky, a figure sits in silence, deep in thought. This panel is from Kagurabachi's chapter 2, page 23. Everyone missed out on Kagurabachi's earliest contributions to peak. I have been obsessed over this panel's haunting silence. In my obsession, I discovered this panel was not quiet introspection, but a disturbing depiction of a room filled with water, while a kid sits at the bottom, drowning. The kid does not struggle. He sits quietly, thinking. To understand this moment clearly, we need to know who this kid is. And the panel gives us those details. First, some housekeeping. This video is going to have 3 minor spoilers and one major thematic spoiler. Nothing too major, so you can still read Kagurabachi and enjoy the surprises. Let's check out what Chihiro's wearing. He's in an all-black fit with a sword. So this means Chihiro has adopted the rich legacy of Shonen Jump's black swordsmen, like Bleach and Berserk. But where Chihiro differ is the style of the clothes he wears. He wears more modern clothes that you could just go outside in. Black trench coat, a black jumpsuit, all black socks to shoes. Although these types of clothes would fit into modern society, his choice of all black is so bold. He, of course, stands out. And that black stands out as a symbol of his power, his seriousness. But black is also an inner color. It draws you in. So it shows you that Chihiro is also introspective. From looking at his clothes, we start to understand a bit of Chihiro's persona, because we're seeing how he projects himself into the world. But these modern clothes also come with some sadness, because he has a sword but no armor. So this makes you believe that he is willing to sacrifice his body. He's willing to have his body take the damage instead of protecting it. And he's a kid. So this kid is faced with life-threatening consequences without any armor. But his willingness to put his body first changes this quiet moment, because now we know he's quietly thinking of danger, because he's looking at the sword so intensely. But that initial quiet moment has a highlight of this panel. I still can't get over it when I found it. Because the character is quiet, there is no dialogue in this panel. So initially, when a reader looks at this panel, their mind is just as quiet. So it's a harmonic moment between the reader and the character in the story, Chihiro, where you're quietly contemplating together. And that could only be achieved if there's no dialogue. Your initial thought is to look for what the panel is saying. But without that, you first just take it all in. So we get to experience that quiet moment with Chihiro. But because there is no dialogue, most readers probably just skipped over this panel, because they're like, I already know what this is going to get across. And after that quiet moment, we know there's an element of danger in his thought. Because if you miss the drowning, the artist makes sure you get that stress. Because you can see the way Chihiro has his back against the wall, all the pressure is on him. We are familiar with the phrase, back against the wall. So this moment, that symbolizes pressure. Isn't that awesome? Without dialogue, there's all these messages already being expressed. And I'm not even halfway through. That's the best part. There's only a few elements, and I'm not even done breaking down Chihiro. Because in these quiet moments, you really get to appreciate more of the panel. So with him thinking about this danger, can we figure out what Chihiro's thoughts are? In my opinion, this is the diamond gem of this panel. With Chihiro looking so intensely at his sword, this looks like a moment where he's looking into a mirror, reflecting on, who am I? When people look into the mirror and you're fixing yourself up and doing all your hair and all that, it's because you're looking at yourself asking, who am I? So in this moment, we know Chihiro is reflecting on himself. Who? But there goes another deeper level. Because this is chapter 2. As a reader, you're still asking, who is this? Which brings us back to that harmony you get between the character and the reader. It doesn't stop there. Because that question of who am I, the artist is also experiencing. Not who am I, but this is the beginning of the story. This is the story where they're growing with the character. So they're in this moment drawing Chihiro, the main character, thinking who. So it's not just the character or the reader, it's the artist. 3 different people in 3 different worlds thinking about who. This is that harmony taken to the next level. This is divine alignment, where everyone that's participating in this panel is all aligned to one question: who? And these are all the messages you can break down from Chihiro alone. He's a serious kid who's very introspective. In this moment, he's thinking of the dangers and who he is. And that is all just dissected from the panel itself, which is why I believe this is one of the most poetic starts to a manga. All of Chihiro's energy and thoughts are being directed at the sword. And a boy having a sword, looking at it, it makes you think about the huge responsibility entrusted to him. This sword is shown held up, surrounded in the twilight, surrounded by black. It helps for the white to stand out, but it shows that there's a darkness surrounding this sword. And this is going to bring us to 2 spoilers, one major spoiler and one minor spoiler. This sword is enchanted. This is the one minor. This is the enchanted sword named Enten. And Enten in this panel is actually showing the philosophical stakes in Kagurabachi. Enten symbolizes hope versus despair, because a sword is life-threatening. And it was given to a young kid. But because this is a manga and it's fantastical, we don't grasp that reality. But that's pretty depressing that a child has to walk with a sword. And the path of a swordsman we know is walked alone. So any child that is given a sword can easily fall into despair. But on the other hand, Chihiro as the main character with this enchanted tool is chosen to bring hope to the story. The sword is there to help create the light of hope in the darkness, which clearly in a world surrounded by darkness in the moonlit night is a huge responsibility. But in this panel, it also shows you that Chihiro is up to this task, bringing us to our 3rd and final spoiler. But the thing about this spoiler is it's actually 6 minor spoilers put into one, because it is about Chihiro and the sword spirit together. We have to recontextualize the drowning, look deeper at what the water could mean, because with despair, water brings drowning. But with hope, what does this water mean? The water is coming from the sword. What happens is Chihiro and the sword spirit energy is connected, and it's creating this water elements, like the sword's energy is creating this water. So what this water symbolizes is Chihiro's spirit. Chihiro's spirit is of the water bearer. The water bearer is something that has been used in many texts. It goes back to ancient constellations. If you look at how Capricorns used to be drawn, the Capricorn is the water bearer who pours water into fishes below him, Pisces, which is actually depicted in this panel, done Kagurabachi style, because the water coming out of the sword is a symbol of that water that Chihiro is going to use to purify this world in the story. Because water is a great symbol of purity. You can look back in the Bible when we would submerge ourselves for baptism. You use water to shower every day. Hopefully, bro. We're in the anime community. You know what they say about us. Shower every day, use that water. So this water isn't Chihiro's drowning. It's his purity. But the connection goes even deeper because the fishes that accompany Ente stand for so much more. The philosopher Carl Jung spoke about the symbolism of fishes, stating that fishes were the first symbol of our unconscious mind. So knowing that this is the manifestation of Chihiro's spirit being poured into Ente, you could see the connection to the unconscious. And we also know that Shonen jumps in this family tree, like JJK, love to integrate Carl Jung's work into the story. But the fishes being your unconscious mind isn't spoiler. This is the last 3 spoilers, minor spoilers of the panel. This is my last highlight of this panel. Because these spirit manifestation of fishes that accompany Ente, we know to be the techniques that comes from Ente. But one of the spoilers you could know if you didn't read anything else other than chapter 1, a spoiler from chapter 1, which you should have read to get here, but if you haven't seen this panel and you're just looking at it, here's one of the spoilers, is you could figure out the techniques that accompany the sword because Chihiro's dad gives you the symbolism behind these fishes. So if you actually knew the symbolism before reading the story, you could kind of guess, but here's a spoiler. Chihiro's dad says the black goldfish symbolizes warding off evil. The red goldfish brings good fortune. And the multicolored fish is the most interesting. And I'm going to save it for the last part. So, what could this mean as the techniques? You would see in chapter 1 that the black goldfish actually sends out a black long-range slash. And a long-range slash symbolizes warding off evil. But this black slash also pays homage to one of the original black swordsmen with the black slash from Bleach. But Kagurabachi makes the black slash its own, which we love. Next, the red goldfish that is accompanied by good fortune. You wouldn't know this yet if you just read only chapter 2. So this is another spoiler. But if you break down what good fortune could mean in a conflict, you may be able to figure out this is defensive. And the attack is called AK. It's a defensive technique that allows you to absorb your opponent's sorcery and reflect it back at them. A defensive technique that reflects it's perfectly symbolizes good fortune. You take no damage and you put it back on the opponent. Lucky! And now it brings us to the multicolor fish. At first I was actually pretty stumped about this one. The multicolored fish, all the dad says is, it's pretty amazing. And I couldn't figure out how it actually connects to his technique, Nishiki, until I went to the next chapter 3. Someone says to Chihiro, "You're amazing like always." And bells went off. The multicolored fish is a reflection of Chihiro himself. Because if you think about it, Nishiki cloaks yourself in black spirit energy, allowing you to move faster and augment your slashes so they're a lot stronger. So when Chihiro uses this, he becomes like a fish, dashing and dancing through the water. But if you don't believe that, look at the multicolored fish. He is cloaked in red and black, the same colors from the other fishes that are manifestations of the spirit. So this multicolored fish is another form of that harmony that has been executed in this panel. The hero is reflecting on himself while the sword reflects him. That's beautiful. Now do you understand my obsession with this panel? This panel started out as a haunting depiction of the pressure put on a kid, causing him to sink into despair, but has transformed into a panel that teaches us the main character's persona and shows the hope he can bring. This panel is a definition of the power of no words. That's why this is a peak panel that demands to be looked at with the same depth as any high art piece.